Is going on, everyone? Hi, I am Todd Bookspan, founder of Win by Noon. And on behalf of Dave Savage and everyone at Mortgage Coach, I am so excited to have you all here on the Friday Mastermind. With COVID, Dave and I had a long run of both being here together. And last week he took the reins. This week I am taking the reins, and super excited that you are taking time and investing time to be here, whether you're watching this live or on the recording. And I am thrilled today to have truly one of my best friends and mentors, and really one of the people who's inspired not just my mortgage career, my coaching career has had a huge influence on Win by Noon. I guess we've had on before none other than Coach Michael Regan with Building Champions. Hello, my friend.
Great to see you, brother, and always happy to be here with you. I feel the same. We won't make this a Bookspan Regan Love Fest, but man, I completely feel the same. You have been an inspiration to me as well, so it's great to sharpen each other.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to kind of give the background on it, that we go way back. We actually worked together in the mortgage business. When Michael jumped in on the mortgage business, in his office actually for a while was right next door to mine. And we both worked for a company that today we admit we never admit we worked for. It was
you
one of
won't
those
find it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. We just don't pretend you worked at that company. We both realized we needed to get out of there. Yeah. And so we ended up leaving about a month apart. We could never quite line up to work together again, but we actually got together at least once a month and we masterminded over the years. And really has the reason that so much of what I do has been influenced by Michael. And we had him on a few weeks back. He kind of jumped on for the second half of a call with Dave and I just said to him afterwards, man, we got to do that again. Sort of just the two of us, kind of getting together and sharing with you. And I asked Michael from the coach's chair what he's been seeing really as the need right now. And you said what, Michael?
Well, the truth of the matter is so many needs. We've got to really focus on the one that I think is the most urgent and important opportunity, which is getting us back in a purchase mindset. So many things are going on right now. I mean, obviously on many levels, this is one of the most amazing years we've ever seen in real estate and mortgage lending. And yet many of us are feeling the fatigue, maybe even burnout. As I talk to people who are producing at a clip they've rarely, if ever, seen before, they're pretty crispy, and so are their teams. They're excited, they're thrilled. Nobody has a bad attitude. They're just feeling the burnout. And so as they are preparing for a summer season of purchase activity, as I think some of the groundswell is pretty evident in most markets, all of a sudden the reality is hitting of, oh my gosh, if we add purchase contracts to this pipeline, how are we going to do this? And so I'd really like to spend some time today talking through that, because capacity is going to be a major topic over the next 3 months.
I think that's so key. And I think that's where a lot of originators that I'm talking to are really, that's kind of a blind spot for them. They don't realize, they feel like, hey, I've got 24 hours in a day and I can just continue to crank up their production, but they're not thinking about the fact that it's wearing on their team members, it's wearing on their direct team members, as well as the people at corporate who are trying to underwrite and fund loans. And so I love this conversation, because I feel like you started off mentioning something I think that a lot of us forget about. However, I'm seeing that purchase takeoff, right? I was talking earlier, I guess really end of last year, early this year, about the fact I think it's going to be the best year ever for us in the mortgage business, right? Healthy refinance volume. It's still going, strong for most people I'm talking to, but, on this purchase side, I think people have to kind of recenter your head. You've got to actually take that refinance piece, say, okay, let me move it to the side for a few minutes and then jump in on the purchase. So where do you suggest people start?
Well, okay, so let's just start with language, because I think when we talk about the strategy that's going to drive some of the activities that we can focus on, I think we have to build a foundation around, what language are we using? If we're in the habit right now of talking about the first half of this year as a refi boom, a phrase that I've been hearing way too often, I think it sets a mindset with our team and maybe even with our audience that's really the narrative. And what I would suggest is what I've been saying since the winter time, when we saw the groundswell of this coming, is this is a historically low rate environment. And if we start talking that way, we start thinking about lots of possibilities that exist. And refinance is always going to be one of those possibilities. And as long as we're in an artificially low rate environment like we're in, and especially with a long-term forecast for intervention to maintain some degree of lid on this thing. I think it's fair to say that in a historically low rate environment, refinance will exist, as will restructuring of deals when that's appropriate, as will purchase business, and so will some investment business as well. So let's open up the portfolio of options with our audience by reminding them this is a historically low rate environment, and set that tone as the conversation piece.
Yeah, I love that. That's great sharpening. See, I told you this is what I always love spending time with this guy for. And so how do you propose people start? So when you talk about the three pillars, you just want to lay out what they are and then let's go through each one.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, this is a tool that that our friend and my fellow coach at Building Champions, Bill Hart, put together in a resource tool that we use, and I use with all my clients. Any of them that are listening have gone through this with me. There's a couple of them that are like, oh my gosh, the three pillars of purchase production again. But here's why I love this tool that Bill created, and then I've modified over the years to reflect some of the things I see, is it helps me sort my strategy for focusing on purchase production into three main categories. And I want to make sure you know, Todd, I'm going to make this tool available to anybody after the call who'd like to use it. So I think Robert will help us out by giving us a link to my Coach Michael Regan page, and I'll be glad to distribute the tool to anybody who'd like to see it and use it. But here's how it lays out. Number one is we need to acknowledge that we do still have a referral partner pillar that we need to find a strategic way to serve. And that's going to include lots of real estate agents, builders, financial advisors, attorneys. You get the idea. This is going to be that traditional referral network, whether you formalized it or it's informal. We need to develop a strategy for that pillar. The second pillar that I see involves what you and I typically think of as our database pillar. And one of the mistakes I see often that we make is we trade out the word database as synonymous with past clients. And today I want to spend some time talking about expanding that definition quite a bit to include lots of categories that are in our database. We'll get to that in a moment. The third category that I think everybody should acknowledge is we still have to have access to some consumer direct strategy. It may not be our primary strategy. We may not be, full boat in that camp, but understanding that we have an audience of customers out there who do want to deal with us directly, and having good access points for that is really valuable. And there's lots of categories we can dive into there, but referral partners, database management, and consumer direct are the three pillars. And man, I'm ready to dig in when you are. Let's put it back in your camp, Todd, because I think you've got a lot of experience with that first one. What are some of the referral partner strategies that you are seeing as really important as we head into the summer season?
Well, I mean, the obvious easy one is your realtor database, right? You're the realtors that you've worked with, been in touch with, and it's been pretty incredible, right? With Win by Noon, about half of our clientele are real estate agents, and I've been doing lots of real estate agent webinars with some of the loan officer Win by Noon clients, and it's amazing to me how many of them have said that they are not hearing from loan officers during this time. Right. And I think that's just mind-boggling, but I understand it, right? I understand that when you're on the phone all day, let's just call it slinging refis, you're focused on that, right? They're coming in at you, right? You're reacting to that. You're not spending that proactive time, connecting with your real estate agents. And, it's okay. It's not too late, but I do know from talking to folks like one of my former one-on-one clients, Sean McDowell, who works in Ryan Grant's branch out in California. He said he's had more cold calls with real estate agents and set up more quote unquote coffee meetings over the phone and got him more commitments for people to work with them in COVID than he's ever had. He said it's been the best thing for him because he's reaching out proactively. He's making it part of his strategy. And I think that that's what you need to think about is are there some holes in my bucket with my current real estate agents? Are there opportunities in the agents that aren't really my referral partners, but have been the ones who have worked with me in the past on the listing agent side, or maybe even referred me loans, but aren't currently referring me loans? And then who are those targets, and figure out how can you go after them during this time? Because I continue to hear stories from people who say, gosh, you know what? I had this big whale real estate agent. He was the listing agent on a property, and I called, and pre-COVID, I would have never gotten him. I would have gotten an assistant, but now he's sitting at home, and guess what? I'm actually getting him live on the phone, having a conversation. And I think that that's really the key. People forget what to say. So what would you say to someone who's calling a realtor that they've forgotten to call, that maybe they need to ask for a little grace from.
Yeah, well, first of all, you just categorized that really cleanly. So I hope people listening are picking up on those three categories, because I think that before you script anything, that's exactly the way to do it, is to separate your true partners, those that you've made a commitment to have a mutually beneficial business relationship with, from those that are in that second category, the ones who are, we remember these, Todd. They're the ones that say, "Oh, we love Todd Bookspan. We give him all 2 deals we get a year," and you just say, "Thank you, Mary. We love working with you too." And they're great people, or maybe they still believe in some old 3-card rule. If anybody even still has cards, I don't know if those exist. But you're exactly right. You've got to be clear on who is my audience, because what your partners need to hear from you right now is a doubling down on your commitment to develop new strategies to invest in each other. And investment might mean time, might mean energy, might mean creating new things together, and it may mean a little bit of money. But what I want to be clear on is the way we want to script and set up those conversations is, it's time to double down on our commitment with that first category and be really clear on the expectations over the next 3 months for how we're going to engage with each other, how we're going to communicate during this really busy time that we have ahead of us, how we're going to tighten up our process to make sure that our service levels are excellent, and that we're maintaining communication with our customers, reducing their stress, all those important things. So I think a partner planning meeting, even over Zoom, just like this, we don't have to put anybody in a risky situation. We just need to connect. So that scripting, I think, is different than, to your question, how do we re-engage with some of those it's been a little distant? We haven't done anything in a while. And Todd, one of the things I've always loved about your Win by Noon strategy is the way you map out your week with those time blocks. You used to call them jam sessions, and they've really been foundational to your business, and now hundreds and hundreds of people who follow you, is that you really focus on being consistent with those calls over a period of time. So if you haven't been consistent, maybe that's step one, is start blocking that out for the month of July to get back on that track of being consistent. You and I used to say Thursday was the best time to make those calls, and unless you've modified your strategy, no, okay, then let's just block out next week and say, I'm going to make calls next week. How many should you make? Let's start with a time block that says, if you can make 60 minutes worth of calls, and go through that second list with a I've missed you call. I've missed connecting with you. I've missed talking with you. I've missed serving you and your team. And it's simply a connection call. And then get back in that rhythm and routine every Thursday of reaching out to as many as you can until you can build your stamina back up. I think that would be where I would suggest, going with that, is just make the commitment that you're going to be back in front of them. And then that third list, I think you talked about the potential referral sources, the realtors that are either have a great reputation and brand in your market, and you'd like to get to know them, work with them, or maybe it's been a long, long time and we just haven't, had any contact. I think having a few of those on your goal list each week, maybe 3 to 5 of those folks that you're going to reach out to, that you say, I know it's going to feel like a cold call, but I'm going to push myself to re-engage. I think it starts with just the commitment to do it. As far as what we say, you know me, Todd, I'm a big, if you want to have a great conversation, prepare great questions. Don't go in selling anything. Go in asking really great questions. Find out how they're doing. Find out what they're working on. Find out what's important to them. Find out how you might be able to help them and serve them. That's the attitude I want to take on those calls. I never want to go in with a hand looking for a handout. I want to look for an opportunity to give and serve. I love the book you had me read, the Jab book, I think it was.
Yep.
Let's give before we really put ourselves in a position where we might earn the right to work with those folks we haven't talked to in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're correct, right? If we when we did Scriptapalooza, you guys remember Jay Crowell started off talking about he always puts himself in the right mind frame, and that he cares about the people on the other line, and he's got this heart open for it. It's the same thing when you call somebody, whether you're in a state that's, everyone's out there, been showing houses all along, or whether you're still in, massive quarantine. It's just really, how the heck are you doing, right? I mean, it's just such an easy question to start. And then that typically seems to me, when I'm doing that, opens up the floodgates, right? Then all of a sudden they just can't stop, talking and talking. And then, like Michael said, I think there's so many other great questions you can ask around their business that sort of set up maybe the gap they have where there's that opportunity that you can help them down the road with whatever it is they're trying to do to get their business going as they move forward. Whether you're in a state with super low inventory, which I know is a lot of you, just asking questions around that. Ask them how their team is doing in isolation. Ask them if they're going into the office. There's just so many basic questions that you can come up with as a response to whichever direction they lead the conversation. Because I'm finding a lot of them are kind of personal conversations. Gosh, I'm really
Absolutely.
struggling, right? It's really been hard on me. It's been hard on my family. That's different if they've got, like me, I've got adult kids, right? 18 to 25. Guess what? They're self-sufficient. I got other people that are like, my 2-year-old's running around. I'm running my own daycare and homeschooling and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the part we all forget, Michael.
Yeah, as I hear you say that, whether it's Jay's comment, which sets it up, or all of the examples you just gave, let's land on this. If they don't know that you actually care, it's going to be really hard to re-engage that relationship with them on a business level. They have to know that you actually care, which means you have to take some time prior to making those calls, thinking through those things. What are the things I'm willing to explore with them? I'm not saying these folks have to become your best friends. You don't have to turn into their therapist. You just have to care. And if you care enough to ask how they're doing and ask how they've handled things and all those great examples you just gave, it builds trust. Once trust exists, we can talk about the things we're doing in business, and we can explore the things that we might be able to do to help each other grow. But that category delineation that you laid out at first is just a critical first step. So again, to recap, start there, revisit your lists, make sure you're clear on your partners, make sure you're clear on your referral sources that maybe occasionally work with you, but it's not a partnership level engagement. And then have that third list, that list that feels to you like prospects, whether they were on the listing side or they're an elephant in your market that you've been going after. Always have somebody that you're pushing yourself to meet. And Todd, a strategy you and I've used in the past is don't always feel like you have to cold call. That's not always the only way to get your foot in the door. Use your resources. We've got all kinds of technology available to us today on a tool like LinkedIn. Go find out who these people know that you already know and reach out to the person you know connected and ask for a referral introduction. Create a bridge. Make it easy for them to connect with you and separate you from all the other cold calls they get. I think that 3-bucket strategy on your referral sources is a great setup. And then start making the calls. Get back on your win by noon planner commitment to make those calls every Thursday. Build it up 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes until you're in shape to do that every week. That's our job as originators, is to be out in front of these people, be visible and be available to serve them. That's what it's going to take to get back on that horse.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things that I've seen some chatter, even just in the last couple of days inside of our mortgage coach community, has been the financial advisor leg. And you are always so good at that. So why don't you set that up for the group?
Well, it's funny. I don't always understand why that's not a more common pillar for purchase production or category within that referral partner pillar. I don't know if we don't know what to talk about. We don't know what's important to financial advisors. We don't know how to crack that code. You and I, went through our CMPS training, going on 15 years ago, and were introduced to a really clear line of messaging that I think is maybe more relevant right now than ever. Think about the average homeowner in America who's willing to have this conversation in a low rate environment about their financial future. They're willing to talk about things that matter beyond the rate and the payment. They're willing to talk about a place where they can safely and securely invest to grow and accomplish some goals. If these are conversations that our clients are willing to have right now, we should be stepping into those opportunities and not only showing some curiosity about what's important to them in terms of their long-term savings plans or their long-term goals to pay off their home or their long-term goals to send their kids to college or their long-term goals to retire. But we should have an opportunity when it's appropriate to connect them with a trusted advisor. And that means making time to connect with those folks and showing them why your conversation with those borrowers could be so valuable to them and vice versa. Todd, it just seems to me like such a layup because so many folks right now want to find that financial peace. They're looking for some version of peace. And we perhaps, maybe not perhaps, I think definitely have more visibility to a person's total financial picture than any other financial professional I'm aware of. So I look at it as my responsibility. It's not an opportunity. I'm responsible to ask those questions. You and I used to call it page 5 of the 1003, and maybe we need to get back to having some of those page 5 questions. You know, what are the things that you're trying to accomplish financially so that we can structure a mortgage around your long-term financial plan? And maybe if we shift that language a little bit, we discover that we can really serve our clients in a much more meaningful way and create a total separation from the conversation around low rates. And I think that's a super valuable opportunity right now.
What do you think is a good script? I mean, we're going through a lot of purchase applications. We're going through more refinance applications. And oftentimes I find originators, because they're setting up the refis with no cash to close, they're not asking the asset related questions. But I would encourage you guys to ask about their assets and keep pushing, right? Any brokerage accounts. And then you're going to have that opportunity to figure out who is a good referral. What would your script to a financial advisor that you don't know be when you're trying to get her or him to understand, hey, I'm actually going through these questions with my clients and maybe you're an opportunity to help them?
Well, okay, so everything I start with is a question. So I'd want to know from that financial advisor's point of view, first of all, is it important for you right now in your business to help new clients who are trying to find new ways to invest in accounts that will help them with long-term goals, like paying off their home, like sending their kids to college, like retirement? Is that important to you in your business? Are you looking for new clients who are doing that? If they are, I'd ask them, is it helpful to you to be working with another financial professional in the mortgage lending space who has a unique view of some of those opportunities? If I were willing to ask them 2 to 3 questions that would really open up that conversation, would you be willing to follow up with them if they showed interest in a no obligation consultation to find out if you might be able to help them with some of their other long-term goals? I know that sounds like an overly simplified answer, Todd, but every financial advisor I've talked with, those 2 questions open the door for the conversation. And then the third is, be ready to demonstrate your financial acumen. Like once that, crack in the door opens, be ready to show them that you're talking about things that elevate above the typical mortgage conversation. Show them that you understand how using tools like Mortgage Coach
I was going to say the TCA is the obvious layup here.
It is. And I feel like that sounds like an advertisement, but let's just call it what it is. It's such an amazing tool for helping people see where asset allocation and payment allocation could benefit from a more diverse investment strategy. And there are ways to create a shorter path to financial freedom if we're willing to demonstrate that. And so you've got to show the financial advisor that you have those tools in order to have those meaningful conversations. And once they see that you're capable of that, they immediately separate you from your competition. They immediately say, well, I've never talked to another lender who cares about things like creating a mortgage offset account savings plan for paying off their mortgage early. I've never talked to another mortgage advisor who's even asking about other long-term savings or debt management strategies. I've never talked with another mortgage advisor who even understands different risk allocations for these investments and could hold a competent exchange with their customer to tee up that advisor. So once you're able to show them you can do that, and it's, again, not that hard, it's just important. We have to care enough to want to step into that. We have to care enough about, do we see our relationship with these customers as just a transaction? Or when we say things like client for life, do we really care about their life? Do we really care about all those other things that matter? And when we have decided we care, let's dive in and let's show those advisors that we're a really worthy partner for them if they're willing to be available to us. And I don't know that there's a better time to do that than right now.
Well, I think that's so true. And the other thing I would probably add is think about, you got to stack the deck, right? You're going to have advisors who only want, accounts that are $1 million and above. And you have other advisors who will only want $500,000 or 100,000. And then you're going to have the young guns who are just getting in the business who
Yeah.
might be a great match for some of your younger clients who are getting ready to start off. And so make sure you're asking questions around what their ideal client is. Of course, their ideal client is someone with a lot of cash. However, you'll have to figure out based on their experience level, really what are they targeting? Because the last thing you want to do is land some advisor who's, works with the whales out there and then send him a minnow.
Yeah, I guess I didn't say that because you're absolutely right. That seems so obvious to me that we would do the same thing if we were back in the other referral partner categories. We wouldn't match first-time home buyers with a realtor who only works with luxury homes. We'd do a great job of making that match, and I hope what you said is true. We'd do the same. We'd recognize that certain advisors will be a better service value proposition for certain investors. But the key is starting the conversation. All you're trying to do is find out who's trying to grow their business and help people, find out who they ideally believe they can help, and let them know, I work with folks that might benefit from that. Would it be okay if I introduce them to you for a no obligation consultation? Before we decide how much money they have to invest, let's find out, could you really help them? And if you really could help them and we really help them, we build trust, and maybe over time they begin to trust that advisor well beyond that initial conversation we've had. Maybe they become a client for life.
I love it. So what other, those seem to be real estate agents and financial advisors seem to be number 1 and 2. What other pillars do you encourage people to look at as we head in?
Yeah, so I want to shift to the other 2 pillars, but before we leave the referral partner pillar, I want to state, perhaps master the obvious, but let's call it out. We're coming out of a season in which I think more people have been cooped up at home than they've ever experienced before. And that's going to create some tension in some of these houses. And I don't say this lightly, and I certainly don't celebrate it. But if we aren't well networked with attorneys who are dealing with some of that reality, it's a missed opportunity. It doesn't mean we have to make it a primary source of our business. It doesn't even mean we have to go out and market ourselves as a person who's serving that business. But if we care about these people, then there are real families right now who are trying to figure out how to restructure their family in the future based on the season they're coming out of. And we need to be available to those attorneys, because if we're not, someone else will be, and they probably won't serve them with as much integrity as most people I know are on this call. So make sure you've got a handful of attorneys in your network that know they can reach out to you if they've got clients who need help restructuring their family future.
I think that's key. The other part there too is that they also send emails around their firm if they have a small to mid-size or large firm saying, hey, who do you know who can help me with blank? That's gotten our team a lot of referrals this go round, because that's been a pillar we've had, because I got family members who are attorneys. That always helps. But we've got other firms where we've helped other lawyers, attorneys. I don't know why I struggle with that word today. And so that's actually been a lot of the referrals we've gotten is based on that. It's been an email forwarded from someone else or copied, replied saying, hey, I recommend Todd's team because they've helped me before, and it's copied on that firm-wide email. So I would not overlook that one. You've got attorneys you've helped before, and I think it's just one of those things where you can call them and say, hey, you know what, I realize I've overlooked this as an opportunity to help my clients. Again, don't look at it as to get more opportunity to get more loans for me, an opportunity to help my clients who need attorney referrals. What would, tell me a little bit about your firm, what type of referral would be good for you? Because again, attorneys who are partners in law firms also tend to get credit for other referrals that come in. So if they're the corporate attorney and you refer them someone who needs some family law help, that'll actually help them in their standing within the firm when it comes time at the end of the year and they do their review, if they've referred out other business within the firm. So that's something else to make sure that you ask them about.
That's really good insight, Todd. And I like the way you phrased it too, because I think that's the right approach. Let's serve family law attorneys because they have diversity in their practices. And some of them, we tend to think in this context that, maybe the topic we're dealing with might involve divorce attorneys, but how about the ones who the clients we have who need a really good attorney to help them with family planning on the will and the trust side, and creating a really great legal structure around their asset management strategy. I think there's just all kinds of opportunities there to build networks. And that's going to be the key is just really realizing that these are opportunities to build relationships within these networks. The goal is not to work with everyone. It's to figure out where you have great strength and can really serve the best based on who you are and what you want to do. So great advice, great questions. Let's skip over to pillar number 2.
I think our database is a huge opportunity always, because I think when we had one of the Masters Coach calls that you and Coach Bill Hart hosted, I think you called it the 4 Rs, right? Certainly refinance was the last one, but it was, referral was on there, relocate or
Repurchase.
repurchase. There we go. And so I think it's the idea that you have a lot of people in your database who you're thinking only refinance, and there's other opportunities there. There's referral opportunities. Where do you think is the best place for people to start there with their database?
So let's back it up just like we did before. We said, let's make sure we got a good foundation before we dive into a strategy and start executing. I think we need to think about our database a lot like, if I can give you a visual, a lot like an umbrella. An umbrella has many spokes, and your database has many spokes. And if we're going to really get a nice full coverage with our database, clearly we want to recognize the importance of the past client spoke. It's huge. We don't want to discount that at all. Let's also recognize that as we just left the pillar of referral partners, we now have a history, maybe 10, 20 years, depending on, where we are at the season of our business. They occupy a huge piece of our database as well, because those referral sources are a strong part of our database. We've also got then a business network. Lots of folks out there who have been part of our professional network, who aren't necessarily in real estate or trash collection, because that seems to be super popular in this neighborhood at this very moment. We all need to pick up the trash. But you've got a professional network out there, folks that are business owners in your community. That's another spoke in that umbrella. How about your friends and family? Let's don't forget them. Let's don't forget as well that you've got perhaps other personal networks, right? Some of us are involved at our church or our synagogue or in a community group. That's another spoke. And last but not least, my favorite one, and I think a lot of people get surprised by this, think of all the TBD and pre-qualified contact info you have in your database for people that have never closed a loan with you. It's a huge opportunity to stay in touch with them and market to them. They trusted you enough to give you their social security number and their bank accounts, maybe their tax returns. You can stay in touch with them even if they made the decision 6 months ago to do something with someone else. Don't give up on them just because they didn't close their last loan with you. So now you've got this umbrella with all these spokes. Now go back to the way you set it up. I think having an understanding that you can think through that entire database by changing your language around opportunities for great referrals, it is a big deal, because I'll put this challenge out to the audience. If you never met another lead source in 2020, your database is strong enough to feed you for the next 3 years. I hope you guys know that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go out and build new business with new lead sources. It means that's how valuable all those spokes are in your database. And you got to treat it with that kind of care. You got to realize that if I don't go out and keep adding value to all of those folks in my database, I'm missing an opportunity for people that already know me, they already love me, they already trust me, to refer me to people in their networks. And Todd, what's the data tell us? We all know 300 to 500 people in our personal networks. Imagine if we ignited the whole database to feel confident they could refer us because we were serving them so well. We were adding so much value to them. We'd never need another lead source.
Well, I think it comes back to, you mentioned jab, jab, right hook. How do you add value? So what would you suggest to someone who has ignored their database because they've just been so inundated with inbound referrals that they haven't actually taken the time or scheduled the time to go outbound? Where would you suggest they start?
Well, I know you and I historically have talked a lot about the value of an annual client review, but right now I would tell you, take that out of your mind as a frame and just talk about a client review. Like, put yourself in an available situation with as many of them as you can reach out to acknowledge. Look, you're probably aware of a lot of things going on in the news right now regarding banking, real estate, and certainly mortgage lending. It's probably creating a whole lot of stimulation in your email box or your physical mailbox. And I want to be available to take an opportunity to review things with you, regardless of how long it's been since I've last seen your mortgage. And so providing them with a detailed review of how their mortgage is performing against some of the bigger questions that you and I like to ask around their long-term goals and objectives. I think that's a great place to start, because most people aren't being proactive to do that. They're just handling, like you said, inbound, hey, I saw rates were in the twos, can I get a refinance? That's reactive management. Let's proactively reach out and reach out to folks that are in that database in any of those categories and offer to do a mortgage review. We've got great tools and resources. Let's start there.
Well, obviously the TCA is the pivot to get in there and do that. And I think you have to think multi-channel when you do it. I think so many loan officers are relying on their email database going to their clients, and it just doesn't work, right? Yes, you'll get some responses when you send out an email. And our team has continued to educate during this time, sending out biweekly emails around what's going on in the real estate market. We talked about what was going on with forbearance and how when COVID hit, and those definitely got folks to respond. But we've really had to resort to, there's nothing that's been better than the phone. Actually picking up the phone and calling has by far been our best. However, with a big database, we've also been doing a lot of mass texting, which has worked really efficiently. And then the quick thing though is how quick can you get the person from text to the phone has been our experience, because it's just too hard to go back and forth via text. Get them on the phone. And so just keep in mind that it's going to take some heavy lifting. The best advice would be to go ahead and call everyone one-on-one. It depends what you did for transactions last year. My team did 400 transactions. It's harder for them to call 400 people proactively. And so they had to resort to some of the other technology that's available. But think through, same thing we talked about before, Michael, you've got to schedule time for it. You've got to make it a priority, especially if the refi volume has slowed down. And you guys heard Jeremy Forcier talk about it when we did our site visit with him, Dave and I, earlier this year. He focused first and foremost on the people from 2019, right? They still remembered him the most. And then guess what? Then he focused on 2018. They remembered in the next amount. And then slowly but surely got back to old clients. What I'm seeing with our team is we're going back to 2012 with clients. And again, got to be transparent. Some of those people have bought and sold once or twice since then. But the crazy thing is they remember our team and they're still willing to actually engage with us now. A lot of them are moving, so we've got a lot of pre-qual set up with them since we're talking about purchase production, and a lot of them are refinancing, and it's great opportunity for you not to be scared to go back. And I think it's the same thing we talked about with the realtors we haven't talked about, right? How the heck are you doing, right? If more you knew about them, right? If you knew they had young kids, how did you do with all of that? If you don't know, then just ask, well, what's it like at your house right now? What else would you suggest, Michael?
Well, it's funny you say that, because two things. I want to acknowledge what you just asked, and then I want to come back to a topic that I think a lot of LOs are feeling right now, which is just overload. But let's come back to that. So what's happening at homes right now? Picture most kitchen tables over the last 90 days. We're eating more meals at home than we've ever eaten, and people are sitting around those kitchen tables having this conversation. Some version of it is, wow, I always loved where we lived, but never realized I was going to be here this much. And I'm suddenly feeling like if we're going to be stuck in the next wave of shelter at home, or even worse, quarantine, where it's a real serious lockdown, I'm not sure that this is going to be the setup that's going to work well for me if this is our new future. So they are thinking about and talking about relocating. They are talking about renovation, or maybe, fixing up the property that they're in. They're thinking through these things, and these are regular conversations. Why wouldn't we want to be present in those conversations? Why wouldn't we want to help them think strategically about that as their debt management specialist? I mean, that's who we are. We're the advisor on the other side of the equation. They've got an asset management strategist. We're the debt management strategist. If we don't step into that conversation, it's a missed opportunity for us to serve them in a meaningful way, because they care about it right now. We're not selling anything right now. We are absolutely solution providers for a problem that already exists. So that should be exciting to us as professional problem solvers. But go back to what I said about the overload. A lot of our LOs that are listening to this, or will listen to it later on a recording, are thinking, yeah, that sounds great. How am I going to find time? I am just overlay, like the idea that I'm going to carve out an hour or 2 hours and call my database to see how they're doing and to see how I can serve them and help them. That sounds overwhelming. I just want to remind all of you who might feel that way. It's understandable, but it's not good enough if we plan to be serving these folks for a long, long time. We have to get in better shape. If your team right now and your process that you run was designed to handle 10 units a month and you're closing 25, that's kind of like an athlete who's, used to sprinting and suddenly we're telling them to run a 10K. Like, we have to get in shape. So think of it as a conditioning exercise. Build it up. Start where you are and get going. Because the sooner you get in condition to where you can proactively reach out to your database and serve them, the less attrition you're going to have in the future when you find out, yeah, those folks needed help from someone and they just went and, typed into Google and found somebody that could help them. That's not going to make you feel great a year or two from now when you find out that you could have served people you really cared about. So even if you can't make this your full focus strategy right now, find the time to start where you can and accomplish what you can do and build your stamina, get your team back to a place where this isn't overwhelming to them heading into the fall. Because the newsflash I would say we're all waking up to is this is not a typical refi boom. This is our reality for the foreseeable future. We're going to have a lot of these opportunities. And I want us to feel really great about serving all these clients that are in that database, or all of these friends and family, or all of these referral sources, anyone in those spokes of the umbrella. This is our time to shine. This is our time to serve them with joy and excellence.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And I do think the biggest challenge is making the time for it. And just like we said on the calling your referral partners, I would just start with an hour, write it into your calendar, make it a commitment, right? Dave and I did a call on setting the standard, and make it a standard. Hey, I'm going to do that, and be okay letting the other phone calls go to the voicemail during that time. Be okay with your email not being responded to for an hour, and then make some proactive calls out to people. And I think what you'll find is that when you do it, especially those people that you connected with before, they're going to be so happy to hear from you, right? The conversation that they're all worried about what's happening with the real estate market, right? You guys know what your area is doing. You're a local expert. I would tell you here in Arizona, there's no inventory. I talked to a buddy of mine who is runs one of the Zillow listing teams. And he said there was less than 10,000 homes available in the Maricopa County, the Phoenix marketplace, which is crazy because we normally sell about 8,000 homes a month. And so there's just not a whole lot there. That includes $1 million houses, right? Which are a big part of it. And then all these small houses. I talked to someone who had 50 offers on a home over the weekend of, a sub $300,000 home in one of the suburbs here. And people are worried about their house values going down because of COVID. They don't realize that with no inventory and prices getting, driven up, that it's actually solid. And so think about what are the concerns of these people. They may not be thinking, hey, I need to get a lower mortgage, but they may be worried that their values are going down, and should they, what's going on there. So I think that's just the other part of the conversation to make sure that you educate people on, because I do think that is the other worry that we're hearing when we're reaching out to our database.
I'm listening to you say that, Todd, and I'm thinking, what a dream come true, that we actually have an audience of hundreds, if not thousands of people who are excited to talk about real estate and debt management. Like, what a dream come true. If we're not having fun right now, and I realize this is hard, I'm not naive to that, but if we're not having a little bit of fun right now, when are we going to have fun? Like, this is an amazing time to be in the seat we sit in and serve these folks. And maybe our teams, because they are feeling a little bit of burnout, have forgotten that. This just feels like a prize fight, and they've been, just slugging it out round after round. If that's how you and your team are feeling, look, we've got a 4th of July weekend coming up here. This would be some coaching advice to those of you who are just feeling exhausted. Maybe it's time to say, you know what, if we don't proactively take a break, schedule some time where all of our teammates, maybe you stagger them, figure that out. But if we don't take a break and sort of reset our emotional clock around the idea that this is our season to shine. We've been waiting our whole careers for a season like this, where our database is excited to talk with us about what we care about. This is that moment. And I really want to give you guys permission to say, if you need a break, take it. 24-hour days, 7 days a week is not a formula for success. It's a formula to fail and fail big. And I don't want to see anyone who thinks that's a long-term strategy, in a bad way. I want to encourage you, step off that crazy train and rethink your frame. Go back to Todd's wisdom on this and start scheduling out some things proactively. And I'm going to add to it, schedule out some proactive time off. Like, give yourself a break. Put the phone away, put the computer away, go walk your dog, go play with your kids. You may not be able to go on vacation, but go do something that just rejuvenates your heart and your mind and gets you back to the level of excitement to serve this database, because they're ready to hear from you.
I love it. So before we move on to the third pillar, is there anything else on database that we want to make sure we cover?
Yeah, only 3 more hours of content there that we don't have time for. So how about I just let you know that I feel strongly that database is the most important of the 3 pillars personally. Everybody has their opinions on this, but I just believe, man, if we don't dive into this one, we're going to look back and think somebody else got the attention of people that first had our attention. And I don't like that. That spurs my saddle to want to get out there and reach, get on that phone, block out that phone time and have those conversations. But let's take a look at consumer direct, because I know this is also a popular one. Many of you are doing consumer direct strategies. Some of you are dipping your toe in the water. Some of you are, head first. And then I also work with some folks who are like, yeah, that's not even that important to me. I don't spend a lot of time on that one. I just work with realtors and database. So my first comment is going to be consumer direct. Let's have this conversation around exploring some curiosity on what's available right now, instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, this is another place I have to spread myself too thin. So here's what I see, Todd, is when we look at consumer direct, a lot of us have chosen social strategies as a way of keeping in touch with both our realtors and our database. But what we realize is once we've done that, we're highly visible to a whole world of people out there who might come to us first because they've seen something we've been putting out there, we've been promoting. And so I want to start off with a question for you. When you see folks that have really engaged their social strategies, what's been a good example of how they've done a strategic plan to serve consumers directly? What's worked really well in the world that you've seen?
I just think it's education, right? That's always you got to remember jab, jab, right hook, add value, add value, add value. And then you can say, great, if you want to refinance, reach out to me. Great, if you're thinking about moving, I'd love to help you with your purchase. And so, I think that's the easy one to do, is to do something with regards to, your social. We know that Instagram and Facebook stories have been really powerful. I don't know enough about TikTok, which I keep hearing about. I've been hearing Gary Vee talk about it for over a year now. My kids are into it. They watch dog videos, but everyone says they're into financial stuff. So if any of you guys are doing it, I'd love to have you guys comment. We'd love to hear what you're doing. But I think it's always education, Michael. I think it's short, 1 to 2 minute videos on a question that people are having, and then just educating on it. And that's it. And then the next time you go out there, do something different, right? And we've already mentioned some of those topics. What's happening with home values? What's happening with forbearance? How is coronavirus impacting mortgages? And then other examples, right? Show a TCA. We've seen people talk about it, right? In our community here, where they've put out a TCA scenario. Hey, I just saved a client, $300 a month by repositioning their debt, and then what that looked like, and then talk about it, and then just put it out there, because again, you're looking to tell stories that resonate with people. So when I did my radio show for 5 years, well, we always told stories. People remember the story, and they're going to ignore it if it doesn't have anything to do with them. But they're going to listen to it if it's something that's relevant. And you guys can go back and watch all the Bill Hillestead videos that we talked about. The easy button is to upload your database into Facebook, create a private audience. And then when you run those videos, then, push those videos towards those folks. But I'm not an expert on that, but Bill is. So watch those, watch the stuff that he's put out there on that. But I think that's where I'd start. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah. So even hearing you say that, I'm thinking if education is sort of the focal point, it's the mission, right? That's what we're going to do, is we're going to elevate our availability to educate the audience. When we've used social, it's a point of entry, but let's go back to some old school things. You know, you and I love this topic of what was old is new again. And think about how many times you and I 20 years ago were doing first time homebuyer seminars. Well, today, nobody really wants to get together in a room and do that. But there are a lot of people trapped in a housing situation, maybe an apartment or a condo or even in mom and dad's house, and they need to be a first-time home buyer, and they would love to get on some version of an easy one-click, you know, Zoom webinar that you use as an educational platform to help an audience of first-time home buyers. So what a great opportunity for some of you who love educating and who love working with first-time home buyers, or maybe it's military home buyers that you love. Put these webinars on and use that platform in a way that's easy for your audience to engage with, so that you're cross-leveraging your socials. It becomes part of your marketing message, and now you can host what we used to call a seminar as a webinar, and there's an audience for that. They're hungry for the information. Another one I think of is, think about how many times we had hoped to connect with an HR director in a company and get an audience with a medium-sized business. You know, certainly the mega businesses are going to have their own solutions, and maybe the small businesses aren't going to be our audience. But think about how many companies are in our communities that employ 50 to 150 employees. So they want to serve those employees with a benefits package. But maybe right now, with times being tight, you know, they're looking for as much freemium content as they can offer their audience. And again, guess what all of those 150 employees at the company are thinking about when they're not at work? The very same things we talked about with your database. Is this home right for me? Am I in a good situation if I've got to work from home for the next couple of years? And on and on. Call on some of those HR directors and find out if you can put on a webinar for that company. See if you can serve them in a way that doesn't cost them anything, but gives you an audience of buyers to work with directly. Those are two strategies that right now, if I had the capacity, that I'd be pushing hard on, Todd.
Well, the funny part about it is you're talking about these webinars for first-time home buyers and for veterans. I'm thinking, go back to pillar number one, right? I'm calling my realtors and I'm saying, hey, by the way, I'm hosting this webinar and I'd love you to invite some of your clients to it, right? Because again, it's a benefit to them. And I'm thinking the same thing when it comes to calling my database. Hey, I know that you've already refinanced. Hey, I know that you just bought a new home, whatever it is. Hey, maybe you know some first-time home buyers who would benefit from a webinar that I'm putting on. And so again, it's a way for you to overcall call reluctance and be adding value to others who are out there.
And it allows what you said earlier. You're leveraging your desire to educate and give valuable information to an audience who truly has questions, and they need someone to help them filter and sort the answers. And that's where we get to step in. I mean, again, I don't want to rant on this, but I mean, how awesome is that? How awesome that the things we want to help with, there's an audience of people saying, we want that. We care about that. So when I look at consumer direct, that's what I think. Whether you're staying online with socials, whether you're leveraging socials and cross-pollinating into those other pillars to create educational webinars, just think about how you might be able to multiply your efforts and create, you know, leverage with those pillars to serve lots of people who need what you do.
Well, and I think that's key. And I think a lot of times people think of consumer direct and think of other, you know, lead gen, like systems working with real estate agents like Sync and Boomcount and buying leads and all of that. But, you know, that is still out there. And that's certainly not either mine or Michael's area of expertise, but it's certainly something that you can do and certainly can be profitable. And would love to hear if anyone's doing that, you know, what's working, you know, throw it down below, whether you're watching this live or watching this, you know, watching this later. But I think that's where people, again, I think it's like all these other things. You just have to start doing it. You know, I think that's consistency pays off in all of these things. And, you know, if you do a webinar like Michael suggests and you do it once and you don't get a good turnout, well, that's okay. Don't quit, do it again. Because in the end, it doesn't really matter if you have one person on who can become a client, or you have 3 people on, or you have 33 people. It's no different. I've been doing a lot of webinars, as I mentioned, for Win by Noon with real estate agents, and a loan officer will get together their real estate agents. And for me, same thing. You know, yeah, I'd love if every webinar I did had 20, 30 people on it, but guess what? I'm just as effective if they've got 5 or 10 people on there and I'm talking to a smaller group. Guess what? They're just as likely to want to be part of the community that, you know, that we've got.
Yeah, you're so right about that, Todd. And I think when we allow ourselves permission to remember that every single person we know has an audience of 300 to 500 people that care about them. We don't know who that one person is. We just know if we serve them with excellence and we really deliver value to them with the questions they have, and we provide them with tools like that TCA to show them, you know, viable options. We don't know that they don't turn into a maven, that they don't love, you know. By the way, we talked about those 4 R's earlier. You know, one of the caveats to the R is, you know, don't minimize the value of getting a great online review. That's such a great opportunity to create capacity for that multiplier effect. And so if that one person came to your webinar, you added massive value to them, and then all you did was ask them for a meaningful review, that can become your multiplier. So that, just like you said, that one can become 3, can become 10, can become 30. You know, I'm a music fan, Todd. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard back in the 70s of, you know, that band that we all know today that was playing in a bar and 5 people showed up. But one of those 5 people was the guy who signed him to the record deal and made it happen. You don't know who comes to your webinar. Neither do I. So we have to serve them all with excellence, because if we do a really great job, this could be how we set ourselves up for the next 5 to 10 years of our career, is that one webinar. So treat it with excellence.
All right, so as we kind of wind down here, let's throw out some tools that you guys can use. Go to coachmichaelregan.com and you'll provide them with the 3 pillars tool. So Michael's got a great tool that he mentioned Bill Hart created with Building Champions, and it's a tool that lists all these things so that you can kind of do your own review and checklist. What would you add to that, Michael?
Yeah, I use it all the time, because in fact, every time I draft a quarterly plan, or even right now as I'm using the 30-day focus plan, which would be the second tool I would make available to you. So the 3 pillars tool is a great setup because it allows you to sort through your thoughts. None of you are going to do all 3 pillars top to bottom. It's just not possible. What you want to use the tool for is to figure out which 2 or 3 areas in each pillar can I make a difference in, and then pick 2 of those specific ones that you're really going to press on in the next 30 days. And then I'll give you a 30-day planning tool that allows you to just dive right in, schedule it out, just like you said, and make it happen. I'm going to hit mute here.
I think that's perfect. And I think again, that 30-day planning tool is a great opportunity for you to go back to your real estate agents and help them plan how they're coming out of this, regardless of where they're at, coming out of this whole setup. It's a great opportunity for you, for yourself. And I just think it's what you need. And it's also what your referral partners need. And so don't shy away from trying to push them. Don't shy away from being the person who helps get them lift and reach their goals by going back to what Michael said and asking those questions. So I love it that you're going to provide those tools and make those available.
Happy to. I mean, look, like you, Todd, I've learned a long time ago, when I make these things available to folks, I'm not pitching coaching today, and you're not pitching Win by Noon planners. We just want to serve people. And sometimes they come back and say, tell me more about that Win by Noon planner, and how does coaching work? I know that the opportunities come when they're appropriate. My job is to get these valuable pieces out there and help you in the way that we can. I hope you got some value today out of reviewing the 3 pillars of purchase production. And I hope you guys are getting buckled in. This is going to be a huge second half of the year for purchase production. So take a break if you need it. Get your team geared up for running a 10K, and let's get excited about it. This is going to be a fun year.
I kind of feel like everyone's got to get ready to run a marathon. And so
maybe that's true.
I think, again, take advantage. A lot of mortgage companies I know are open on the 3rd next week. I would be thinking through, hey, can I give my team off that day?
So good.
Give them a 3-day weekend to recuperate. You, as Michael said, may need to recuperate as well. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself, but more importantly, give grace and be making sure you're taking care of your teams. I just think, I don't know. I've loved this last hour, Michael. I've missed our time together, and you can see Michael's up in beautiful Lake Oswego. And I was loving it when he was down here and we were getting together.
Getting a little too sunny up here, Todd.
It's okay. It's right outside that window there. It's 100+ degrees already. And so you made the right choice. And I'm just super grateful for you for taking time to be here today, everyone, for my friend Michael, who I'm grateful for that he took the time to be here. And so on behalf of Michael, the folks at Building Champions, myself and the team at Win by Noon, and of course, Dave and the whole Mortgage Coach team, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching, whether you're watching this recorded or live. And any last words, Michael, of wisdom?
Well, not wisdom, just love. Give my best to Tara and the girls. Tell them I said hi.
All right. Back at Lori and your gang as well. All right, people, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week, same time, same place.
Thanks, brother.